What's good, homie G Slizzle Slice? Welcome to an informative video about the Diablo franchise. When we last left our heroes, the prime evils were banished forever by destroying minerals of varying sizes. Humankind was saved from demonkind, and the town of Tristram was rebuilt as a monument to humanity's everlasting reprieve from angels, demons, and natural disasters.
Nothing ever seems to change in Tristram, does it?
This Fallen Star draws heroes from across Sanctuary, and having bought the base game and Reaper of Souls expansion, I'm excited to see what changes lay in store for my favorite class, the Necromancer. Oh boy, I sure do love being a wizard. The improvements of this game over Diablo 2 are immediately apparent. Movement is smooth, stamina is gone, as for the most part is inventory Tetris. Conversations are shorter, and much of the story is delivered through books and notes, all narrated and typically shorter than 20 seconds. They can also be listened to while moving, meaning that to immerse myself in Diablo's lore, it is no longer a requirement that I stop playing the game and watch scrolling text for 1 to 3 minutes. There's even action-packed PvP. I'm kidding, I didn't touch this. This is Leah, niece to Deckard Cain, recently taken out by the orbital strike. Having witnessed this from 3 feet away, Leah is naturally assured that her uncle is still alive, probably, and that I should bring him home before supper gets cold. Thankfully, explosions, fire, and gravity are not unreasonable, so I find Cain completely unharmed, being safely escorted from the premises by the Skeleton King himself. Having recently become intimately acquainted with the Fallen Star, I can think of no one better to tell me all about it.
What can you tell me about the Fallen Star?
Not much.
Thankfully, this tsundere blacksmith Hadrig knows where I can find the Fallen Star, and forcing him to watch as I brutally murder his wife is all the motivation he needs to enlist in a life of servitude. Hadrig is the first of 3 artisans used to craft and upgrade your gear. Each artisan has a unique story and personality. Hadrig has a cold, grieving heart born of loss, and only by melting away his hardened exterior can you reveal his tender underside, his caring and sensitive nature, his muscular arms and strong blacksmith's hands. What was I? Oh, right. The star can be found directly adjacent to the Skeleton King Leoric's throne room, located in the depths of the cathedral, and to reach it, I'll have to defeat him. As I'm making my way deeper into the cathedral, I see a cult of Discord and anime enjoyers performing dark rituals of infusion, infecting promising young men with thoughts of simping and futanari. After an intense and drawn-out battle, I free one of their would-be victims. This is Cormac, whitest of knights, nicest of guys, and the first of your followers. Followers are the new and improved bodyguard system. They have their own unique lore and quests, they are significantly more customizable, and each follower specializes in a unique set of skills. Like all nice guys, Cormac naturally excels at being friend-zoned and berating women.
I feel as close to you as I did to my sisters.
Oh. Yes, of course. Sisters. How long do you think Adria would last if I held her head under one of these blood pools?
With Cormac's help, I defeat the Skeleton King, and the Fallen Star turns out to be an ordinary mortal just like you and me, with amnesia that can only be cured by his ancient angelic sword, which shattered when he fell from heaven and survived burying himself in a smoldering crater through layers of rock and stone. As I'm gathering the first of the sword's fragments, I am ambushed by the leader of the cult herself, a goth cosplaying e-girl who instantaneously attempts to gaslight me into giving her the shard.
Who are you to take what is mine?
Yours? I believe you are mistaken.
Regardless, I have claimed it.
Is he bothering you?
Cutting a path through the sea of virginity, I claim the first shard. But afterwards, Magda attempts to prevent me from claiming another, by telling me exactly where to find it. En route to the next shard, I find Lyndon, serial liar and haver of sex. Lyndon is the second follower. He specializes in nothing and has real in-game dialogue begging the player to bring him instead of the Templar.
I'm not as bad as I look. Really. Stop walking away!
Just as I'm collecting the last of the sword's fragments, Tristram is attacked by the fairy goth mummy, who kidnaps Starman. A scuffle breaks out in the process, but thankfully, nobody important died. With the sword reforged, I set out to rescue Starman from the world's most intricate sex dungeon. And within that dungeon, I encounter an old enemy.
What's up, bitch?
Meet the Butcher. The Butcher, me. Oh, he's dead. This would probably be a good time to talk about the difficulty. By default, the game is set to normal, which can be raised to hard if you open the in-game menu. I knew the game had more difficulties, but I assumed they would be unlocked as I progressed the game further. Unbeknownst to me, to raise the difficulty above hard requires leaving the game. Because I didn't know this, several important and genuinely well built up story encounters had been sorely disappointing. The worst of these being Laurence, whose lore was still being spoon-fed to me long after the boss fight, which only lasted 30 seconds. At this point, I'd already came across my first legendary, Squirt's Necklace, which effectively gave me double damage. I thought this was disgustingly powerful, and it is. But then the butcher dropped a ring so broken it dramatically altered my entire playthrough. Before I say what the ring does, a brief summary of the replacement for skill trees. As you level, you're given fixed abilities. You can mix and match your abilities, mostly choosing what feels best to press or synergizes well with your other abilities. Every ability also has runes, which let you alter the damage type of your spell, or in some cases its entire functionality. An example would be Arcane Torrent. By default, it fires a torrent of arcane damage projectiles which follow my cursor. There's a rune to make it deal fire damage, there's a rune to make it deal electric damage, there's a rune that makes it deal a ridiculous amount of damage but can no longer be aimed, and there's a rune to make it place mines wherever it lands. Aside from spells and runes, you also unlock passives, which you can mix and match up to 4 to alter your build. One such passive is Paralyze, which gives all of my lightning damage, including from runes, a 15% chance to stun. There's no internal cooldown for this effect, meaning it can happen over and over, including to targets who are already stunned. This ring I found makes it so that any enemy who triggers the Paralyze effect, even if they're immune to stuns, will take a ludicrous amount of damage. Damage which is doubled by my necklace, meaning that lightning attacks now had a 15% chance to send enemies directly to the Shadow Realm. With the Butcher dead, I rescue Starman, returning his sword and memories.
I remember.
In a shocking twist, it turns out that Starman was an angel all along. And not just any angel, but the archangel of Useless himself, Tyrael, who's come to deliver a warning to humanity. Two lesser evils, Belial and Azmodan, are currently plotting to usher the armies of hell into Sanctuary. And it's up to me to stop them. We're then treated with this cinematic, in which Tyrael gives up his divinity and becomes a regular mortal, while Imperius, Archangel of Valor, gets his ass beat. Also, if you've yet to grasp just how enormous Tyrael is compared to mortals despite being one of us, I want you to look at the size of Leah's hand in his. Now, look at your own hand and imagine that a fully grown woman's hand only takes up this much space in your own. Now imagine the size of the rest of that woman. Anyway, welcome to Caldeum, where I seek to stop Belial, but not before getting revenge on Magda for killing my personal item identifier. The cult has covered their tracks using illusionary magic, which would matter a lot more if I didn't immediately encounter a young woman capable of dispelling illusions. Irena is the third and final follower. Specializing in parasocial relationships, she can and will force enemies to kill each other for her amusement. While more useful than Lyndon, she can't taunt enemies like Cormac does, making her less useful for my frail wizard body. This won't, however, stop wizard players from picking Irena regardless for her aesthetics, including me. Irena leads me through several cultist hideouts with tasteful decor, freeing the cult's prisoners before seeking out Magda herself for a climactic encounter.
No illusions to hide behind this time? I didn't think you were brave enough to face me in the flesh.
It matters not. While you hunted me, Belial's Imperial Guard captured your little witch Leah. Soon, her power shall be his.
Afterwards, I meet up with Leah for a touching reunion with her loving mother, Adria, who abandoned Leah at birth. Adria reveals that she too has been fighting the forces of hell, and that if we were to recover the Black Soul Stone, an ancient Horodrim artifact, we could trap all evil inside, at which point Adria would destroy the stone and banish all evil forever. The Soul Stone's whereabouts are known only to a former Horodrim wizard, Zoltan Kuhl. Unfortunately, Zoltan Kuhl was decapitated and scattered around the desert. A minor inconvenience, but if I can just get my hands on his body, Leah can resurrect Zoltan Kuhl using new demonic hell magic she learned from her mother Adria.
We must be getting close to the head by now.
How do you know?
With Zoltan Kuhl revived, he is now free to lead me to the Soulstone he spent his life obsessing over, where he will undoubtedly hand it over willingly. While making my way to his sanctum, I was filling the city's freshwater supply with corpses when inside of a barrel I find Shen. Shen is the second artisan, used to turn gems into better gems. Shen will try to pull the wool over the player's eyes, but there's no fooling me as I know Shen's true identity.
I am starving. Do you think we'll find any good food down here?
Well, I've seen some piles of rotting carcasses.
How do you think they would taste? I have heard of many strange delicacies and partaken of many upon my journeys, but... Oh, you were not serious.
While in the sewers, I also found these bracers, which spawn large monsters to violate my character each and every time I use a pylon. This is actually a good thing, as the monsters are elites and elites drop better loot, meaning that even after I replaced the bracers, I kept them in my inventory for their unique effect. After arriving in his sanctum and looking at the soulstone for all of 2 seconds, Zoltan Kuhl immediately betrays me. By this point, I'd finally figured out how to raise the difficulty and decided to go to Torment 1. Trash mobs were now hitting for most of my health and didn't always immediately die, so I was looking forward to my first genuinely engaging boss fight of Diablo. And I would keep looking forward to it. With the Soulstone in Adria's capable hands, our heroes head for Belial. This time I went up to Torment 3, and whereas I didn't instantaneously kill Belial, he only landed a single attack before dying, leaving me once again feeling unsatisfied.
I knew you'd have an easy time defeating Belial.
I wouldn't say it was easy.
I would.
Oh, you're way too modest. Now, Azmodan, that's going to be a fight.
Belial is dead and inside the Soulstone, meaning it was now time to pursue Azmodan. Azmodan is a brilliant tactician and the general of Hell's armies. He could strike from anywhere at any time, meaning we have no way to prepare any sort of defense. With an IQ of 200 and the element of surprise, who knows what kind of damage he could do.
You thought you were so clever that you'd outwitted us all, but not me. Soon my army shall pour forth from the Shattered Mountain.
He's going to attack from the Shattered Mountain. Act 3 takes place at the same mountain from Diablo 2, and once again I find myself single-handedly stopping a siege, the perfect opportunity to catch up with my followers.
What happened to the Vigerai Lord you mentioned?
My sisters and I waited until all of his associates...
We saw the signal fire. We must light the rest, but the demons swarm around them.
What happened to the Vigerai Lord you mentioned?
My sisters and...
Look out!
Oh, man.
What happened to the Vigerai Lord you mentioned?
My sisters and I waited until all of his associates had gathered to summon a greater demon. We slew them all.
In all honesty, the developers did a really good job making it feel like I'm in a siege, in no small part due to the background scenery. I also think this act has the funniest dialogue.
You think we're going to die? Don't be stupid! Mum says the walls are impenetrable. Why is she crying then?
My dearest Jonathan, I hope this letter finds you well, and that life at Bastion's Keep is not too difficult. Arthur is growing up to be just like his father. I'm happy to hear you'll be back in time for his birthday.
Azmodan has ruled the ravening hordes of the burning hells for over 3 centuries.
Their hero will not expect us to attack from below. My demons breach the depths of your keep.
His cunning is beyond imagining.
Did you see my dad out there? He promised he was coming back.
It is unfortunate.
After raising the fort's defenses, Azmodan once again tells me exactly when and where his armies will appear, so I descend the tower to confront his infiltrators. While heading over, I'd like to make a small observation. You may have noticed that throughout the game you've been able to see what's happening on my screen. This is because Diablo 3 has traded the auto map for a mini-map, as well as a full-sized map which can't be used while moving. A controversial change among old people with short-term memories, as it can be immersion breaking to periodically cover their screen with a map, as opposed to permanently covering their screen with a map, as there's nothing more atmospheric than self-imposed blindness. If I can be real for just a moment, I enjoy having fun in video games, and I enjoy looking at cool graphics, but I am also a loser and efficiency enjoyer. If I had the option to cover my screen at all times with a semi-transparent auto map, I would. Not because I'd enjoy it, and not because it would improve my experience, but because it's more efficient. I think this game made the right call in not giving me that option, and I think I had a more positive experience overall as a direct result. Anyway, within the depths of the keep, I find Azmodan's head of infiltration, the Lord of Gluttony.
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! I'm bigger than you, I'm higher in the food chain! Get in my belly! Come on!
With the keep saved from the immediate threat of body positivity, I leave to pursue Azmodan on the open battlefield, and after crossing a really big bridge, I find myself instead standing before a terrifying monstrosity.
To battle!
Yes, the beast is down.
A victory for the ages!
The beast's death grants me access to the Spire of Pain, which I stunned my way through for no particular reason, eventually reaching Quelaag from Dark Souls, where I decide that it was well and truly time to increase the difficulty once again. This time I went from Torment 3 to Torment 6, and my initial experience seemed promising. Environmental hazards were now dangerous, my pylon braces had become less consensual, and overall combat felt significantly more engaging, if not long and drawn out. Surely now boss fights wouldn't be complete and utter pushovers.
Never dared dream. All evil lies trapped within that stone. Once it is destroyed, the eternal conflict will finally end.
But the eternal conflict did not end. As it turns out, Adria isn't so nice after all. A shocking revelation followed by another equally shocking revelation. Adria got railed by Diablo 20 years ago, resulting in Leah. And that means that Leah is legal.
Yes! 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 Yes!
We are then greeted with this cinematic where Leah, now possessed by her father, is disintegrated.
No! No! No!
Diablo shows off his bakery, and Imperious, Archangel of Valor, gets his ass beat.
Shining heaven, Imperious. For soon, nothing of...
Oh, for fuck's sake. Act 4 opens with the aftermath, where a salty and somehow still alive Imperious is berating Tyrael for being a failure, while Tyrael is depressed over not committing genocide. Leaving the two useless men angels behind, I look for Auriel, Archangel of Hope, who has been captured by Chainsaw Man's ancient demonic ancestor. After freeing Auriel, she bestows her blessing upon me, allowing me to break this material, the same material that her prison was made of. The prison that I just freed her from. By breaking. This allows me to cut off Diablo's reinforcements and pursue the Prime Evil himself. But first, I was sick of everything being a pushover, and so it was time for an experiment in difficulty. And this time I go straight to Torment 10. Now, learning the mechanics of every enemy was essential to not dying. Even small swarms of enemies, which typically would be wiped out in a single AoE attack, were now not only threatening, but terrifying. This made for surprisingly fun and interesting gameplay. But this joy was cut short when I discovered a glaring issue. Some monsters' attacks can bypass time and space. This, coupled with unavoidable damage, which of course instantly killed me, meant I soon crawled back to Torment 7. This wasn't terrible and was still a surprisingly reasonable step up from Torment 6. Rares and elites in particular were now threatening enough to be considered mini-bosses, although this newfound challenge was less fun during encounters like this Key Warden, who would instantaneously ensnare my character, then simply walk up and slap the shit out of me. The only counterplay was teleport, which would have been fine if he didn't spam the ever-living shit out of the snare. By this point, Tyrael is done being depressed and decides that for once he'd like to do something meaningful, like interrupting women.
How does it feel, knowing you...
Look at the destruction Diablo has wrought.
As we're closing in on Diablo, a bone-swallowing champion appears.
It seems we've both fallen from grace, Tyrael. Have the gun from your bow.
Finally arriving outside Heaven's crystal spire, I met with a quick cutscene in which Imperius, the Archangel of Valor, gets his ass beat.
You've said that the Crystal Arch is the heart of heaven. Please explain.
It is older than time itself, and over the eons, this shining realm took shape around it. It thrums with living light.
Quickly bumping the difficulty up to Torment 10 for maximum enjoyment, I enter the Crystal Spire for a climactic encounter with the prime evil himself.
Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary.
Nothing personal,
that one doesn't count.
Nothing personal, kid. Nothing personal, kid. Nothing personal, kid.
What the f? After many bouts with fair and balanced gameplay, I went from Torment 10 to 9. What? From 9 to 8? What's the fuck? And 8 to 7. Torment 7 meant I was actually able to reach Phase 2, where Diablo pulls me into the Shadow Realm and summons the greatest threat to my well-being. Me, meaning I now had to juggle playing with myself and avoiding the same fuckery from Phase 1. And having no desire to experience being one-shot again, I begrudgingly crawled down to Torment 6. This meant I was no longer being one-shot by attacks transcending time and space, and so of course I immediately won the fight, whereas the duration was pretty good, and it wasn't nearly as easy as the previous bosses. I couldn't help feeling like my victory was somewhat hollow. Still, this was the most fun I'd had with Diablo games up to this point. With the primeval defeated, hell lost the eternal conflict, and angels and humans lived happily ever after.
Forevermore, we shall stand together, angels and men, in the light of this glorious new dawn.
Fast forward to the Reaper of Souls expansion, and Malthael, the former Angel of Wisdom, wants to use the Black Soulstone to destroy all of demonkind, including humans who are half demon. This act takes place in Westmarch, currently overrun with the undead and corrupted angels. This was also where I learned that you can accidentally move your OBS frame and not notice for 2 hours. The city is filled with innocents, but thankfully the majority of them are already safely taking refuge within the chapel. The city is in flames, and every passing moment more people are dying, meaning that Malthael, who feeds off death, becomes even stronger. Naturally, my highest priority is to mingle with the locals.
I know who is responsible for this. It's the poor.
I would rather be dead than poor.
We'll never see our friends again.
True, but we won't see that cobbler down the street again either.
Why, you're right. In fact, we're the only cobblers still alive. We'll be rich!
Finally, people worth saving. While en route to kill Malthael's angels, I tripped, hitting my head, opening my skull, and developing selective amnesia. This was when I encountered the transmog enchanting artisan, Miriam. Those with a keen eye may have noticed Miriam throughout the campaign. Her primary purpose is to spoil the story right before it happens, and it appears that Miriam too just so happens to develop selective amnesia.
I am Miriam Jazir, a seer of the Vetchin people. I foresaw our meeting.
Shortly after this gaping hole in Diablo 3's continuity, I found myself at Uzrael. At good old Uzi, the first boss of the expansion. I was expecting Uzi to be a culmination of everything the Diablo team had learned about designing boss encounters. This is not the case, as his animations were long and most of them could be interrupted by stuns, meaning that I passively nullified almost every single mechanic. Regardless, the city is saved and it's time to pursue Malthael. But where is Malthael? Thankfully, Miriam the Amnesiac can see into the future, and so knows that the only person alive with knowledge of Malthael's whereabouts is none other than Mother of the Year, Adria.
It must be hard for you to see your daughter suffer like this.
Everyone suffers.
One mediocre encounter later, and I learn that Malthael is hiding in Pandemonium, which is somewhere on a battlefield in the Eternal Conflict. Reaching this place would have been difficult alone, but thankfully Malthael began attacking angels for no apparent reason, which made my problem Imperius's problem, finally motivating Imperius to stop being a beta cuck and instead be the cute tsundere waifu he was always meant to be.
Even if you release Malthael from his madness, I will not thank you for it.
Imperius Chan informs me of a battering ram which can be used to enter the Pandemonium Fortress. For no discernible reason, this is when the game decides to make open-world activities fun for all of 30 minutes. First, there was this one event where a demon had taken over this angelic superweapon. I needed to defend the angels from waves of demons while they attempted to exercise the weapon. And up until this point, I would typically kite everything because I didn't want to die, but being anchored to this area meant I now had to be a little bit bolder. But what made this event really interesting to me was that periodically the superweapon would pulse energy waves that did high damage to not just me, but also demons, meaning I could strategically bait demons into standing inside it. Whereas these energy waves weren't quite threatening enough to kill me, the concept of a double-edged sword environment is very cool. The other fun event was when I reached the battering ram and for some reason had to ride it as it demolished the door. It was really fun. This time I'm confined to an even smaller area with even more dangerous enemies. I have to balance thinning their ranks and destroying hooks which halted the battering ram's progress. That alone was pretty cool, but what tied this together and made it my favorite non-boss content of any Diablo game, including Diablo 4, was the addition of this guy. Because of him, I died to this encounter not once, but twice.
You're going nowhere! I got you for 3 minutes! 3 minutes of playtime!
These were the only events in the entirety of the campaign that were even remotely fun, and I wish there were more of them. Once inside the Pandemonium Fortress, Malthael is only a brisk stroll away. Thousands are dying with each passing moment, and once again, time is of the essence.
I am returning to town.
I use this opportunity to reunite Irena with her long-lost sisters before killing them in front of her. I teach Hadrig to love again, I watch Cormac get friend-zoned, and I even read up on the juicy soap opera origins of Sanctuary. It took a while, but finally everything was out of the way and I was ready to face Malthael. Now I was ready to fight Malthael, and this was, finally, it only took the entire game, a pretty great fight. Phase 1 involved avoiding a few well-telegraphed attacks. Phase 2 was the same but with some very healthy and very dangerous adds, as well as this new instant death spirit swarm. In Phase 3, Malthael absorbs the power of the Black Soul Stone, and now, along with the abilities of Phase 1, he also teleports to the middle of the room to use this ability. From what I could gather, the only safe place to stand was behind him. I almost killed Malthael on my second attempt and it felt like I had this fight in the bag. Then, for no apparent reason, this ability started cheating, which was problematic because this ability was also dangerous. This glitch killed me several times and was getting old very fast. Not ready to lower the difficulty just yet, but feeling as though I lacked critical information, for the first time in years I swallowed my pride and looked up a guide.
What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold. I'm about to do Mathiel, and I'm gonna show you guys how to kill him. Basically, what he does there is, basically these little blue things will do damage to you. There's like a very low chance of you actually dying unless you do something wrong. He also puts these frost patches into you, and the frost patches are also pretty much like irrelevant. They don't really do a whole lot. I'm doing this on Torment 1 at level 70, and so it is pretty difficult for almost everybody. I'll show you how much this hits for. With 15 million toughness, about 40k. So, I mean, it's not going to kill you. These skulls will circle around and get closer to the middle of the room. I'll get hit by a skull, too. Oh, Templar is doing it for me. Each one hits me for 50k, and then they shoot out from the middle of the room. There's the ads. Ads are also, like, really not that big of a deal. Alright, there's this thing. He's going to shoot these red balls, and there's going to be one corner of the room that's going to be safe, and the other corners of the room are not safe. And let's see how much it hits me for. 100k. And so how I handle it is I get to the middle and I get hit by the red orb and I take the red orb damage. Just take the hit and that's it. Usually it will not kill you. Like this is never, I've never died to this boss once. I get right there and I'm always safe every time. And he's dead. This boss is a complete fucking joke. People saying that he's hard, he's not. Just obviously avoid the mechanics.
Having learned nothing useful, I chalked the fight up to being bugged before turning the difficulty down and easily winning the fight in 2 minutes, which was an incredibly unsatisfying way to end the campaign. So the next day I went back and I beat Malthael the way God intended, on Torment 7 with Bloodborne music. This was a 6-minute fight. It was fast-paced, reasonably difficult, but not completely unfair. And with boss music that didn't suck dick, it even felt climactic. I really can't stress enough how awful Diablo's boss music is when compared to something like Dark Souls, or Doom, or Divinity, or any game that has decent combat music. But I digress. This was a significantly better end to the campaign, and is still the most fun I've had in any Diablo game, including Diablo 4. When Malthael destroyed the Black Soulstone, he absorbed the Prime Evils, and when I killed him, he expelled the Prime Evils. So Diablo is free yet again. I'm starting to feel like trapping the essence of demons in rocks isn't the best way to defeat them. However, my Diablo journey was not yet complete. After all, how could I spend the rest of my life saying how terrible the Diablo 3 endgame is if I don't try it for myself at least once? Welcome to Adventure Mode, where the endgame of Diablo 3 takes place. Here, you can find new areas, quests, and bosses. I'm just kidding. Welcome to Greater Rifts, where the true endgame of Diablo 3 takes place. Within the rifts, you will clear randomly generated maps filled with randomly generated enemies in a race against the clock. Upon meeting the enemy death quota, a randomly generated elite with 1 extra mechanic and 10 times the health will appear, but not before tactically neutralizing any epileptic opponents. Upon dying, Rift Guardians shower the player in loot, and if you kill them before the timer hits 0, you'll be rewarded with the privilege of clearing another randomly generated rift filled with more randomly generated enemies, but with more health and a steadily increasing chance of killing your character with a single attack. This all in the pursuit of getting the same items you already have, but with bigger numbers. It's just as exciting as it sounds, but wait, there's more. Before entering a Greater Rift, you'll first need to get yourself a Greater Rift keystone. To do this, you'll have to clear a Nephilim Rift, which is like a Greater Rift but with smaller numbers, no time limit, and worse rewards. Like me, players may initially worry that they'll have to do a shitty Nephilim Rift for each and every Greater Rift, an abundance of mandatory brain-dead content to artificially inflate the endgame grind. Quite the dick salad, and so you can imagine mine and their relief when I tell you that no, you'll only need to do a shitty Nephilim Rift for every second Greater Rift. A truly delicious, slightly smaller salad of dicks. Greater Rifts award the best gear, the most experience, and are the only way to level up these these shitty gems. These are legendary gems. You can equip up to 3 and all roughly 30 of them have a unique effect, 5 of which are even useful. But don't get too excited as you'll also need to level the less useful ones. Completing greater rifts will allow you to upgrade these gems, maybe. Your chance and ability to upgrade gems correlates directly with the level of greater rift you just completed. The higher level the rift, the higher level the gem. Even after leveling the 3 gems that you actually want, you'll still need to endlessly level the ones you don't so that you can infuse them with all of your gear, as doing so can increase the primary stat of said gear by potentially more than double, with the amount of main stat directly correlating with the level of the gem you sacrifice in the infusion. Diablo 3 is about the pursuit of garbage. Most items will not have optimal stats, and if they do, they will not have optimal rolls of those optimal stats, which makes those items garbage. Upon finding garbage, you can turn it into slightly less garbage by investing your life savings. For example, let's say you find a garbage, the same garbage you already have, but your old garbage had all the wrong stats, whereas this garbage only has 2 of the wrong stats. And you can even attempt to re-roll 1 of the bad stats on your new garbage into a less garbage stat. Let's say you're aiming for critical strike, so you pay for a re-roll and are given 3 new stats to choose from. None of those 3 stats are critical strike, so you roll again, and again, and again, but you still do not find critical strike, and now you're out of reroll materials. 30 minutes of farming Nephilim rifts later and you're ready to roll again. 5 rolls in, you finally find critical strike, but it's only 3% critical strike out of a potential 6. After 2 hours of doing the same thing you already did for the same materials you had already collected, you finally roll the same stat you already rolled, but this time it has the big number. You now have an item that is not complete garbage, so you further upgrade it, investing 3 of your expensive main stat gems and a legendary gem you spent hours leveling up. Eager to test out your new, fully upgraded item, you enter a greater rift. You clear it no faster than your previous rifts, as despite your gear improving slightly, the enemy health bars have also slightly gone up. Then, upon killing the Rift Guardian, you are lucky enough to find the exact same garbage you just finished upgrading. But this garbage has the Ancestral tag, giving it slightly more stats than your previous garbage, and thus the cycle begins anew. Eventually, you'll reach Rift level 90 of 150, at which point you'll soon hit a wall. Everything has too much health and kills you in a single hit. How do you overcome this wall? Well, you can of course grind better versions of the same gear you already have, but that will only get you so far. Eventually, you'll have to grind thousands of Paragon levels, each level awarding just 5 additional main stat. This is the true endgame of Diablo 3, chipping away at a monumental grind day after day, killing the same enemies in the same places for the same rewards. The endless pursuit of less garbage, a mere 99% of what you find being turned into salvage, re-rolling a single stat over and over only to get the wrong stat, or the right stat with the wrong number, forever. On the 25th reroll, you realize that, once again, you're out of reroll materials. You're about to start another quick farming session before bed, then you look at the clock. It's morning now, you've made no progress, you have work in 20 minutes, and you're one day closer to dying. Thankfully, if like me you just want to complete the season journey, you won't actually need to get that far. I finished the season journey in just 3 days, right as I reached Rift level 90. And I didn't actually need to do 90 rifts to reach that point, as clearing greater rifts quickly lets you skip through levels. But whatever amount of rifts I did end up completing was still more than enough for one lifetime. And on that note, let's talk about something that isn't rifts. Adventure mode introduces world quests, which involve going to places throughout the campaign and killing or clicking one or many things. Oftentimes, world quests are just smaller versions of main quests, but now repeatable. Unfortunately, the developers elected not to include either of the actual fun events from the campaign, let alone add more content like them, which is unfortunate as you'll need to complete many world quests, seeing as they are the only way of acquiring these resources, which are essential for completing the season journey. The season journey itself is essentially essentially a checklist of mandatory suggestions. To better understand what I mean by this, imagine you are a child and you say, "I'm bored." So your mother says, "Why don't you go outside and craft a Hellfire amulet?" To which you of course respond, "Why would I want a Hellfire amulet?" And so your mother slaps you across the face and says, "Craft a Hellfire amulet, you ungrateful mistake, or no supper for a week." The season checklist is comprised mostly of arbitrary activities and bigger versions of the same arbitrary activities, naturally, so I'm only going to cover what I consider vaguely interesting, starting with having to collect and complete rifts with 6 different class sets, which is actually an excellent chance to talk about the combat, so quick tangents before that. Throughout the campaign of Diablo 3, you'll probably have fun experimenting with your different abilities and pressing all your buttons, having something new to try out every level or so. But having a movement ability, a crowd control ability, and a passive meant that I only really had 3 buttons to press that actually killed anything. Not super exciting, but not unbearable for the duration of the campaign as, like I said, there's a constant influx of new stuff to play with. By contrast, when you reach endgame and equip a set bonus, only 1, maybe 2 of your abilities deal damage anymore. Or more accurately, 2 of your abilities deal 20,000% increased damage, and to maximize that damage, it's ideal to replace all other abilities with passives that increase the damage of your 2 abilities, meaning that what should be the most fun and engaging part of the game instead becomes the most mindless and spammy. There's 5 sets for each class, and each set was essentially boxing you into playing a tiny piece of that class. It feels awful and is especially tragic when you look at the sets involving transformation abilities. Turning into Energy Incarnate should feel really cool, right? Well, it does, until you're only ever in Archon form, and anytime you're not makes you want to kill yourself. The way this should have worked is the same as Lost Ark, where transformation abilities are their own separate thing that you build up over time. This makes them something to look forward to and lets developers get away with making them more powerful, seeing as they don't have 100% uptime. That, on top of not having to build your entire character around them just to make them worth having, makes them much more fun to press. Anyway, as I said, there's 5 sets for each class and I need 6, which meant I had to level an alt, at which point I learned that when going from a ranged class with high damage and mobility to a melee class with low damage and no mobility, the grass isn't exactly greener on the other side. Enemies deal stupidly high damage and have stupidly high health. They also surround you constantly, which is probably why when you look at the best solo builds for melee classes, every single one of them is ranged. That's right, this guy here, ranged class. This guy, ranged class. The guy with the 2-handed sword and the great shield? You guessed it, ranged class. The season journey also has you complete some fun activities, like killing greed. And on the seasonal journey, it even tells you the best way to reach greed. Simply kill treasure goblins in the open world over and over, and eventually one of them will open a portal to greed's domain. With this in mind, I spent about 8 hours finding and killing roughly 100 treasure goblins when I thought to myself, something's not quite right. Surely there is a better way to do this. And it turns out that yes, there is a better way.
Artifact of old, and that's what you want to do with it.
Greed himself was okay. He died immediately because at this point I was too overgeared, but the fact there's a whole secret world dedicated to this one boss is cool. I like the concept. Another fun activity, which criminally wasn't even on the season journey, is Whimsydale. These are my bags as I entered Whimsydale. These are my bags having left Whimsydale. I like Whimsydale. Anyway, I completed the season journey and my overall experience with the endgame was pretty mid. But, believe it or not, there are things about this game I actually liked, the greatest of which was the follower system. Followers don't really do damage, but when you give them legendary items, a lot of them work. For example, the Unity Ring splits damage taken between all characters wearing the ring, including your follower, who also has a relic that makes them never take damage, meaning that if you and your follower are wearing the ring, you will take 50% less damage. Forever. The Butcher's Sickle, which has a chance on hit to pull enemies in around you, also works if you give it to Cormac, meaning that he will just hit enemies and pull them in. There are weapons with a chance to do various crowd controls on hit. They all work on your followers. Your follower can also wear the consensual pylon braces for you. Thunder Fury's Chain Lightning move and attack speed slow also works on your followers. So ironically, there's much more depth that goes into gearing your follower than your own character. It's actually kind of sad. Here you are, decking out your follower with all this cool gear with its unique effects, and then there you are, wearing 10 items that all either increase the effectiveness of your 1 or 2 abilities or reduce your damage taken so you can press that one ability even more. The follower system was discontinued in Diablo 4, and I think that's a huge misplay. I would have thought they'd improve the follower system, adding new abilities and new utility items and making them unkillable by default so that people would actually use the other relics. It would have been especially cool if they'd given them some customization options. Currently, they can't be changed aesthetically whatsoever, but I personally think it would have been cool if I could level a Crusader and then use the transmog I unlock on the Crusader to change how Cormac looks. I'd also like to be able to customize the body of my follower, choosing gender, maybe some different body shapes and personalities. If I want to adventure with a tiny tsundere female Templar dressed in a 1.5 tons of steel wielding the Guts Greatsword, I should be able to do that. If I want to adventure with an overweight, melancholy, alcoholic male enchanter in a skimpy outfit, I should be able to do that. They could have preset followers too, but then just this one follower who's completely customizable, like having origin characters in Divinity or Baldur's Gate, but also having the option to make your own. If not doing this in Diablo 4 was about immersion, just add 2 toggles to the game. One to turn other people's followers invisible, and one to turn your own follower invisible. You could even add a little circle on the floor to indicate their location if they had certain abilities or items you needed to keep track of. Also, hot take, but I think seasons are dumb. In general, I think ARPGs are stuck in this little box of what it actually means to be that genre, and I think that's a waste of potential. I picture in my head a world where seasons aren't resets, they're content updates. No battle passes, no paid cosmetics, just every 6 months you pay $20 for a new, feature-complete experience. New Uber bosses, not old bosses that just became Uber bosses, but new bosses with their own zones and dungeons and quests. The new zones could have new preset followers who are just as good as the other preset followers but with a new personality. New zones could have new world content like Greed and Whimsydale. They could add fewer dungeons but make them more interesting. They could even add minigame content as alternative means of progression, like a Vampire Survivors mode or a Hades mode, and have developers build on those features as passion projects. They could put in a simple housing system where you do basic levels of building and have a Zen garden or something. You could place items and trophies that you found out in the world and all your followers could hang out there. Of course, you wouldn't want to put anything actually useful in the housing system, otherwise it'd end up like Garrisons in WoW where nobody leaves the fucking things and the cities are empty. Although in Diablo's case, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Anyway, I could go on, but I'm getting off track, so I'm going to end the video here. Diablo 3 has some cool ideas and some stuff that I like a lot, but a combination of those things I like not being fully realized and the gameplay and progression loops being very mid just makes the game hard to enjoy. It's like a well-oiled machine designed to waste your time in repetitive ways.